Welcome, everybody. I'm Chip Rogers, President and CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association, and I am super excited about today's webinar presentation, and I'll tell you why. Over the last few years, I got right back out on the road as we kind of came out of the pandemic and started talking to hoteliers in every corner of this country. And oftentimes, when I would do that in the past, there might be an issue that affects one part of the country that is dramatically different than something that affects another part of the country. But what was interesting this time is that the same issue kept coming up again and again and again, and it persists until this day. And that issue is, how do I find hotel workers? How do I keep those hotel workers? So that's what we're going to talk about today. This is about as timely as a webinar as you will ever find. And I'm super excited, if we could go to the next slide, to introduce you to two people that are really the experts on this. I'll be asking the questions, and I know the sentiment and the feeling of hoteliers, but these are the people that are getting it done. So first, Adam Robinson, who is the CEO of Hireology, and we'll have him tell us about Hireology in just 1 minute. And then Kymberly Kuebler, who is Vice President of Talent at Aimbridge. And I assume everybody knows about Aimbridge, but I'll let Kim talk to us about the breadth of what they're trying to do and the number of people that they hire. So what we're going to do over the next little bit is talk about exactly what we mentioned. How do we find those people that we want in our industry? And then once we've found them, how do we actually keep them so they can build careers in the hotel industry? So let's go to the next slide real quick, because I want to kind of lay the foundation here that I think is really important. A recent study by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics showed that hotel employment is still down, but that hotels support almost 1 out of every 25 jobs in the United States. And, you know, as we went through the pandemic, a lot of people said, if there's one silver lining that comes out of this, at least policymakers will begin to understand just how important our industry is to the overall U.S. economy. And no question about it, this statistic right here proves it better than anything else. Almost 1 out of every 25 jobs in the country are part of the hotel industry. So with that being the backdrop, let's start with Adam. Adam, you're CEO at Hireology. I feel like the name kind of tells us what you do, but give us an example and an understanding of what Hireology does for companies that are looking to do what we're talking about today, find and maintain talent.
Yeah, thanks, Chip. It's great to be here. As you said, my name is Adam Robinson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hireology. Hireology is a technology company. We create software that gives hotel operators the platform that's required for everything they need to be great at recruiting and hiring for their operation. And so from hosted career sites to job distribution to a seamless mobile-first hiring process and all the tooling around that, we're helping hundreds of hotel operators today and over 10,000 businesses in the United States address this issue. In this industry, this is, as you said, this is the issue. And I'm excited to be here today to talk about what we're seeing successful operators doing in the market that's giving them a leg up on other employers in their local geography.
And before I go to Kim, I want to follow up real quick, Adam, because it's interesting. You service not just the hotel industry, but basically all industries. And unlike the past, where there were certain industries that had an incredible need for workers, and then others may be fully employed, we're kind of in a position right now where everybody is looking for talent. That's got to be a challenge.
It is, and you know, just to double click on what you said, you know, we focus on very specific industries, and the hotels is one of the largest for us. We serve industries where people are the product, and that's how I would describe this business. I mean, the room is, of course, the product, but really it's the experience, and experience is delivered by people, the folks on our payroll and on our team. And so it's not just this industry suffering, but the culmination of the shortage of labor for all industries, when combined with the specifics of our market here, where we had the biggest, we essentially led layoffs in COVID and have led the resurgence of employment post-pandemic. It's really a perfect storm in this industry right now, where we've got more jobs available than we have people looking for work by a factor of 2. And in this business, that means, you know, people equals revenue. If you can't turn rooms, you can't sell them. And that's, you can't staff the restaurant, you're closing on Tuesday nights. It's that kind of stuff that everyone's experiencing now. And we're not just competing with, the hotels on the row anymore. We're competing with every employer in our local market. And that's what's different now. And I think we're in that environment forever, frankly.
Yeah, it's not going away anytime soon. So hoping to wake up tomorrow and it looks different that's not a plan. Kim Kuebler, VP of Talent at Aimbridge. Remind everybody about the breadth of Aimbridge, because I think it's important for folks to understand that what you're doing at Aimbridge is really touching almost every corner of the United States, specifically in the hotel industry.
Yes, that is correct. So we're a global operator. We're one of the largest. We are in almost every state in the country. We have about 1,500 hotels around the world, and we hire about 4,000 people a month. So wow. Our vision is to be the world leader in hospitality, to set the new standard. And the way we do that is making sure that we have the best talent. So we're always looking for the best people. And the way that we do that, it's got to be efficient and it's got to be fast.
So Adam touched on this a moment ago, but Kim, I want to follow up with you on it. You're hiring 4,000 people a month. That's enormous. And you're doing this, frankly, all over the world, but we'll focus on the United States for right now. Amongst those 1,500 hotels, how have things progressed, if I can use that term, over the last, say, 2.5 years? Are things getting better than they were a year ago? Are they worse? Where are we in that landscape?
Yes, they're better than they were a year ago, but I'll call it stable, but still a very tight labor market. So you mentioned, I think, or Adam mentioned that there were 2 jobs for every person looking for a job. Last year it was 4. So we're in a little bit better position than we were last year. Employment has stabilized. People are not turning over at the same rate they did last year. We're really seeing that stabilize, but it's still a very tough and competitive landscape.
Adam, are you seeing the same thing?
We are. I mean, any way you slice it, we've got a historic imbalance of labor supply relative to the demand. Last year was, everyone's hair was on fire. Across all industries, the quits rate was at a historic high. Job openings were at a historic high. It was really this dynamic where it was like, if I can throw someone $1 more an hour, or someone, throws my team member $1 more an hour, they're gone. And that high velocity of increasing wage pressure, combined with the surge in demand that we got in this business, it was rough. Last year was tough. It's still very tough. It's not, it's still at a critical level. Last year, I would say it was probably an all-time imbalance. I would go to say that, if we've made it through the hardest part of this, but now we're at a level of pain that I think is going to be consistent and relatively permanent.
I hate that we have to characterize it as a level of pain, but I think you're right. This is not going away. This challenge of finding and keeping employees will be with us, but we're getting better at it. There's no question about it. And there are some market conditions that are getting people back into the job market, which is certainly helping us. But this idea, and Adam, you referenced it, of can I pay them $1 more? We've been doing that now for a couple of years. Wages are at the highest level ever. That's clearly not sustainable. Have you begun to see wages level out? And Kymberly, I'll ask you from an Aimbridge perspective, the same question. Have the wage level increases begun to slow down?
From our perspective, we, at the macro level, wages are still increasing, but the slope of the line is flattening. Wages are still increasing at or above the rate of inflation, 4 to 6% right now across the board. And I think, Chip, what you hit on was, I'd say it this way: you can't wait for the labor market to self-correct to have this issue be addressed. I think if your strategy is pay that $1 more, that's a race to zero profit. Because you're essentially competing with a commodity textbook. If we're out there in the market trying to convince members of the workforce to trade time for money, if that's our approach, sell me your time, I'll pay you the most, that's a commodity strategy where price always wins. And we do not want to be operating with that strategy. It's got to be about more than the paycheck. And as we'll talk about later, what the data shows, and I know, Kymberly will support, is this workforce is willing to take less pay in exchange for the things that are important to them. And the number one thing that this workforce cares about now is flexibility. And so I'd love to hear Kymberly's thoughts on that. But this time for money trade, that strategy is just not one that's going to get you where you want to be.
Yeah, Kymberly, what about that? Have you seen the same thing at Aimbridge, at least the slowing of the curve? And is it market by market, or is it consistent across all markets?
The growth has been consistent across all markets. How dramatic and how competitive it is really has varied. But I'm seeing the same thing that Adam referenced, which is it's stabilizing, it's still growing. Now there's a whole nother slope of minimum wage increases that are going into effect right now. And so we'll see if that pushes things up a little bit. But I think with inflation stabilizing just a smidge, and the wage kind of inflation is stabilizing along with it. But it is remarkable to see how much wages have grown over the last 3 years.
Are some of the markets that were historically low on pay, are they catching up? I'm thinking of
Yes.
Of an Alabama or a Birmingham and Atlanta. Are they now getting up closer to that national average?
Yes, in fact, I'm seeing that across the board. And even where we're seeing minimum wage increases coming in, most of our wages are at least at that level at this point. So it's not as much pressure as it used to be when we saw those large increases. But across the board, we're seeing it in denser cities. It's gone up even higher. I wouldn't be surprised to see kind of an entry level pay at $20 an hour in some markets. But across the board, we're seeing it closer to about $14 an hour.
So Adam, you touched on this, and now I want to dive a little bit deeper. We can continue to pay people more, and that's happened. I mean, I reference it all the time in my interactions with the media, that if you look at the overall economic pay increases that everyone in the nation has seen over the last 2.5 years, we in our industry are actually about 40–50% above that. So we're actually accelerating at a higher pace, but that's unsustainable. And you also mentioned a moment ago that at this point, that may not be the number one thing attracting people to our industry. So what are those things beyond pay that seem to be working right now to get people to at least become interested in a hospitality career? I'll start with you, Adam, and then I'll jump to you, Kymberly.
Yeah, in our research, we see 3 factors that more than any other influence an individual's decision to raise their hand and say, I'd like to learn more. Number one, and I named it a few moments ago, is flexibility. That means different things to different people. You can't clean a room through a Zoom call, right? So largely not work from home positions, but the workforce today, as a result of pandemic era changes in workforce policy, generally means that people expect you to work with them in the context of their life. What does that mean? It means shift flexibility. It means schedule flexibility. It means flexibility in the menu of benefits that you may be offering individuals of all pay ranges in your organization. Are you willing to meet me where I am? Can you acknowledge that this is a two-way transaction and we both have to buy in, right? That flexibility is first. Second is career path, right? So if I come to work for you and I have all the options in the world, I can work for anyone today that I want. If I come to work for you, what's in it more than the paycheck? What opportunities to learn and grow and develop my career do you present in your organization, whether you're a single rooftop location or an Aimbridge? If I come to work for you, is this more than a paycheck? Because that's the opportunity that I'm looking for. And third is work that I think is meaningful. I'm a job seeker. I consider the work I'm doing meaningful. And that, of course, is very subjective, but I think it's important for employers to essentially have a pitch that says, if you come to work for us, we're going to meet you where you are. We understand today's world, demands more flexibility of employers. We're going to do that. We're going to give you more than a job. This is an opportunity and a career in this industry, which is a wonderful one. And third, what you do matters here. And that's, the way we used to do it is we have jobs. look at our list of jobs, and here's the boilerplate. And I think what savvy organizations are doing is they're starting to think about marketing these jobs like products to different segments of the market. So how I market housekeeping might be different than front desk, might be different from sales office, might be different from management or engineering. We're being much more directive in the way that we speak to pockets of the labor market. I think that's what they want. They want to know that you acknowledge their individuality. And I think organizations that do that overwhelmingly perform better in recruiting and hiring.
Kymberly, you seeing the same things outside of just pay?
Absolutely, 100%. In fact, one of the things that I think that Adam hit on, he didn't say directly, is that the workforce has changed. It is not the same as it was 3 years ago. It's not the same as it was 5 years ago. And if you keep approaching it in the same way, you're not going to be successful. So we talk about it in terms very similar when he talked about flexibility. We talk about giving the associate control. People want control over when they work. They want control over how they work. They want control over how they get paid and when they get paid. And the more you can offer that, the more likely you are to be able to attract them to begin. And so, when you think about that, that's if you put a job advertisement out there that it's a 4-day work week, we find you'll get twice as many applicants that if you just list it as a kind of a standard job. You'll also get more if you're transparent and you share what the salary and what the benefits are in those positions, even where it's not required. And then he talked about, the ability to grow your career. And we talk about that in terms of possibilities. So somebody brings the passion and we're going to be able to create a career for them that they might not have even imagined, because there's so many ways that somebody can grow and we have to make that true. So we have a fantastic partnership with AHLA that helps us through apprenticeship programs. We do that. We have other programs in place, but people need to understand because they want to move and they want to grow continuously. And we've got to make sure that we can make that happen for them. And then the last thing he talked about, we talk about it in terms of belonging. People want to feel like they're part of something. And again, part of something that's bigger than them. So everybody who's hiring has to be able to tell that story and be able to explain to the person about how they can be part of a community, the people that they work with and how that community gives back and how they contribute to other people, and that they're doing something that's more important than just the work, whether it's checking in guests or cleaning beds, how that contributes to something that's even better.
Yeah, I try to do that when I talk about our industry, how special it is that people go to hotels because, yes, it's the experience, but what are those experiences? I mean, there's some of the most important experiences in life, whether it's a marriage, a class reunion, a family reunion, a youth baseball outing. These are all really important things that you remember your entire life, and the hotel plays an important part of that. So you're not just, I don't want to cast aspersions on any other industry, you're not flipping burgers. You're actually part of making memories for people that are in some of the most important moments of their lives. So it's important, I think, that we capture that when we talk to people about what a career in hospitality actually means. I also found it really interesting that you just said advertising specifically a 4-day work week and the pay brings you back double the number of applicants. I never thought that. Outstanding. Let's go to a slide. We have some data we would like to share. Brittany, if we could go to that. So look at some of the interesting numbers here. I want to focus first on the one right in the middle, because this really gets to the speed at which prospective employees want a response. 57% say they are likely to ghost if the employer doesn't meet their time frame. And what is that time frame? Within 48 hours of applying. That's right. You see that? And this is that the folks that are looking for these jobs, because as both of you have pointed out, there are so many opportunities out there. If you do the old way of hiring and you say, okay, we're going to get the resume, maybe we interview somebody, and a week or two down the road, we'll get around to calling them back. By that time, they're absolutely gone. Speed to market, I guess not a great term to use here, but speed to response is absolutely critical. Adam, I'll start with you. Are you seeing these things that you're losing applicants if you don't get back to them quickly?
Absolutely. I think what you just pointed out is, for folks listening, asking the question, like, what's one thing I can take away from this hour and put into practice? And it's to audit the speed of your response rate to applicants. Most hotels don't have a recruiting issue. They have a response rate issue. They have a velocity issue. And so, taking a step back, what I can share is that 90% of everyone successfully hired through our platform, and we're talking, tens of thousands of hires a month, is someone who's had their application or resume opened and responded to within 72 hours of submittal, 90%. So said differently, if you're waiting more than 3 days to get back to job seekers who have applied, not only are you wasting all the recruitment marketing effort and dollars you put on the front end to get them in the funnel in the first place, you've lost 90% of the market in 3 days. So the most important thing you can do is get back to them within 24 hours. And someone in your building has to be accountable for immediate response with a personal touch. You can automate lots of it, and there's tooling, of course, that we provide to do that, but you've really got to be on it. And those who are on it, the recruiting teams perform at a higher success rate. I mean, that's full stop, the most important metric to watch.
Kymberly, the speed, obviously, as Adam just pointed out, is incredibly critical to this process. Like, as he mentioned, if you're not getting back within 72 hours, you've wasted your time and you've wasted your resources. But there are other things in the process that appear to be influencing whether an applicant goes all the way through the process. Even just the filling out of forms and providing information. If you're asking for too much, they just kind of move on, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. If it takes more than a couple of minutes, and if they can't do it on their phone, they're not going to continue with the application process. They'll drop it and then they'll never respond. The other thing I think that's really important is how you communicate with them. So if we try to email back the candidate, which is our traditional way of doing it, I mean, look at your email and how many unread messages you have. Chip, how many do you have?
We were talking the other day and I pulled mine up, and embarrassingly, it's over 16,000. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but when I checked yesterday, over 16,000 unread emails. And if any of you folks were offering me a job amongst those 16,000, I'm sorry, I'm happy where I am. But that's the point, is we don't get back to all of our emails.
No. So we text candidates. That's the fastest way to get in touch with them. And in fact, most text messages are read within a couple of hours. And so you're going to get a faster response, and the first person to that candidate is going to be the one that wins. So you've got to simplify the process. You've got to make it as easy on them as possible, and you have to be responsive.
Adam, what else are you guys doing with respect to simplifying and shortening the process so that you are connecting back to them? And I'll ask this as well. Does that first response back after the interview, does it have to be an offer, or is it just some other form of communication?
Yeah, I'll take that last question first. It of course does not have to be an offer. It does have to be personalized and intent-based, right? Thanks so much for applying for this role. We're really excited to talk with you. Here's the ideal. As the next step in the process, select one of these interview times that, where you can come in, just schedule it straight off the text message that's sent to you after you've applied. That's really the model for doing it right. Something like 98% of text messages are read same day, right? Where emails in the 30s. So Kymberly, she really nailed it. I mean, homework assignment for everyone on this webinar. At the conclusion of this webinar, get out your phone and try to apply to a job at your own hotel. Go to your career site on your phone and try to apply, and just note the experience. Are you making applicants retype their resume with their thumbs? Do you make them fill out 19, 20, 30 fields? The reality is, with more than 7 fields, your conversion rate drops by about 8% every additional field, right? So you really want to treat it more like a lead form than you do a full-on job application. That's really what you want to do. You want to eliminate the need to create a login to look at jobs. You want to do it with text. You want to do it really quickly, and identify those areas of friction which are really pop out in the process, but take some intention to fix. So for example, I'm interested in speaking with you, Chip, but it takes me a day to check calendars and email back and forth or text back and forth, that kind of stuff. That's the leak in the bucket, right? Automating interview scheduling, doing it all through text, and doing that at scale is really the model required, particularly for larger operators in this business.
So we've talked a lot about once the person has applied, what is the process to get them through to the next step, whatever that step may be, an offer or just more communication. But what can hoteliers be doing to get more people to actually apply? Kymberly, you touched on a moment ago, advertising 4 days as opposed to 5 days, stating specifically what the compensation is going to be. But what are some of the other tools to go out to a mass market and pull in as many people as possible into the applicant process?
You have to tell a good story, and people have to understand why they would pick your location over something else. So the story, even the way that you advertise the job, has to be creative and attractive to somebody, and it has to be in their language.
And that's it. The language does matter. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So some of it is just the words that you use, but we also know in our industry, you don't have to be necessarily proficient in English. And so I've got to be able to advertise and reach people in different languages based on the communities that we're going to. So communicate on those sites and in those channels where people are, whatever that might be. And it's not necessarily an email campaign. It might be a website, or it could be a social media channel as well.
Adam, what about it? You guys are amazing at bringing people into the process and getting them through the process, but what are some of the keys to attracting folks to even consider the hospitality industry?
Well, Kymberly really nailed it. I would go back to some of the first comments I made. You think about your job as a product. I am retailing a product digitally online. That's what we're doing in talent acquisition in this business. We're retailing products to a consumer base. They just happen to be shopping for jobs. And so I need to sell that product. I've got to sell the flexibility. I've got to sell career path. I've got to sell meaning or belonging. But the thing is, I don't have to necessarily go out in the market and start from scratch every time. My best recruiters already work for me. And so one of the things that we really see successful operators doing, getting 30, maybe 40% of all new hires staffed through their referral programming. And employee referral programs exist everywhere. Everyone's got one. It's just a clunky process. Someone owns a spreadsheet in the accounting office that's tracking payouts, and employees never know who got hired or when they're getting paid. And so it just doesn't stick. And so you've got to productize that employee referral process, make it mobile, make it text-based, make it really easy to self-serve it. And what you'll find is that your best employees can be your best recruiters. A referred employee is 3 times more likely to be working for you in 3 years and costs about 60% less in terms of overall recruitment cost and effort to bring them through. So that's your lowest cost, highest retention cohort. And your own employment brand, of course, and telling that story is equally important. But, job boards are important. I would push on referral programs, and I would be talking about, your own brands and programs like AHLA's, program that Kymberly mentioned, apprenticeships, trade schools, go where others aren't, because it's not the easy button, right? You got to put a little effort and intention into it, and you can really get a leg up.
So we've talked a lot about some of the things that are working, but for all of us, time is the most precious resource. So how do we stop doing the things that no longer work? And what are those things? What are some things that we used to do pre-pandemic that we probably should not be doing anymore? I'll start with you, Kymberly.
Well, I won't say newspaper ads because everyone would just laugh at me, but job fairs don't have the same return that they used to. Again, it's about speed. Now, there's times and places, if you want to do a job fair, it needs to be focused. And again, it needs to be creative. So having a job fair at your hotel and featuring the benefits that come and meeting some of the other people that work there, and it's targeted based on a specific industry or specific role, or bringing in your colleagues, your friends who don't work at your hotel. That's a better way to manage your time and spend your time than going out to the community job fairs that we used to have.
What about you, Adam? Things that we just shouldn't be doing anymore?
Yeah, I think, job fairs are a great example of, a strategy that worked that just doesn't work in the way that people's lives work today. I guess I'll give you maybe something to try versus something to stop. And it's a completely offline strategy, but really works wonders. Every associate in your building that has a business card, on the back of that card should be a QR code that says, we'd love to talk to you about a job, or we're hiring, or we think you'd be great here. That if you, as they say, catch someone providing wonderful service in the course of your life, you hand them the card and say, I'd really love to talk to you. I think you'd be great here. They can apply. You deputize your staff to go out there. You can do all kinds of things, make it fun, have contests, track it, pay referral bonuses or recruiting bonuses. You can do all of that. These are things that most aren't doing, but those who are showing real success with these things, right? It's just, how do I get message scale out in my local market? Well, I want to deputize my employees to refer their friends. I want to deputize my managers to identify great service in the market and invite them to come work for us.
Yeah, I love that, because I've done it 1,000 times and always make the same mistake. I don't have any information to share with them. But whether you're at a restaurant or anywhere where it's a service-related job, and you meet that person that you're like, wow, they would be fantastic in the hotel industry, whether it's their personality, their attentiveness to detail, but the skill set that we all know, we intuitively know we want in hospitality. And then I don't have any way to say, hey, try this or go to this company or we're hiring. And so just putting that little QR code on the back of your business card is brilliant. And we all run into these folks all the time. So it's an easy, as you said, non-digital way, or an offline way, I guess is a better way to put it, to get people that you've already kind of seen are meant for, or at least have the skill set that hospitality needs. So great idea. Brittany, let's go to the next set of slides. So here we go. 67% of hospitality job seekers say they accepted the first offer that they received in their last job search, which speaks to, as we talked about a lot, the speed of getting back to people. And here's something that we mentioned earlier, and I want Adam both of you to follow up on this a lot. 38% say they would actually take less pay for better schedule flexibility. I know we talked about it, but I can't believe that almost 4 out of 10 workers are saying, I'll take less money if you just give me the exact schedule that I want, or something better than the standard 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday schedule. So we'll start with you, Kim. These are, I assume, are tracking with what you're seeing?
Absolutely. And I mentioned earlier, the 4-day work week is going to attract more people, but it's also about retaining your folks too. And again, giving them control. So the more control and the more flexibility you have, the more likely you're going to be able to fill those positions you need. And you've got to be creative about it too. So it's not necessarily the 7 to 3 time slot that you've had in the past, but think about how people can work around their life, whether they have children or if they have a second job somewhere else. And one of the most creative things I saw was doing a little bit about what Adam mentioned before, but one of our managers kept seeing, when he went for his coffee every morning at a local coffee shop, an HVAC van parked out front. So we stalked the guy and asked him if he wanted to pick up some extra money on the nights and weekends to come in and just look at all their P-tax at their hotel and make sure that they were all serviced. So again, it's being creative. It's giving people that flexibility, working around that man's schedule. And then if you think about it, it's got to be real time as well. So something comes up, people want to have flexibility in their lives, and their work isn't necessarily the same priority. So they want to say, okay, well, my kid has something tomorrow and I want to trade shifts with somebody, making that as seamless and easy as possible for people to be able to switch out their schedules and be able to pick up shifts where they want to, and then trade off shifts where they don't want to.
Adam, you seeing the same things? What are other, we see here better schedule flexibility, almost 4 out of 10 said they'd take less pay. In a time where hotel margins are becoming really tight, even with these higher ADRs, there are other things out there that people are willing to trade pay for. What are some of the other successful recruiting and retention techniques that are working?
Yeah, it goes back to that product offering that we're marketing to the market. Yeah. Schedule flexibility is worth approximately 15 to 20% less pay, right? To be really specific, if you're checking my boxes of schedule flexibility, I see a future with you, and I feel like the work I do is meaningful, that generally translates to a 15 to 20% reduction in pay required to keep me, right? Because you think about it, I mean, most pay and poor work culture or environment is not a recipe for high retention, which is a horrible recipe for guest experience, which is not great for profitability, right? So these things are so closely linked. I mean, if we make a promise on the front end in the recruiting process, and retention is about delivering on those promises. And schedule flexibility is easy to say, it's hard to do, because schedule flexibility requires your managers to think differently. It requires them to do a little more. Because I have to mess with the roster. If I'm having, four 10-hour shifts or 4 12s or whatever I'm doing, I've got to manage that roster differently. If I want to add part-time, maintenance hours, nights and weekends, I've got to manage that differently. And it takes an innovative manager to do that. But there are good ideas that have some scale to it. You've got to really be doing all of those things. What doesn't work anymore is requiring your employee to jump through the hoops because you haven't thought about these things. That's when people leave. They're just not going to stay while you work it out, right? The world's too full of opportunity right now, right? You've really got to serve them and meet them where they are. And when you do that, they're willing to trade pay for that extra effort on the employer's part. And it, as you say, that's a bottom line payoff. It's a big deal in an industry where most of our cost is in people.
If 15 to 20%, they'll accept less just by giving them flexibility. That's pretty amazing. Brittany, let's take the slides off so we can go back to the full screen. I want to transition now for the next few moments as we finish up the show and talk about the retention part of it. I always use the bathtub analogy. There's got to be a better one, but if we're focusing all of our efforts on getting more water into the tub and yet the drain is open, you're really wasting a lot. And unfortunately, we've been an industry that has suffered more than most, more than all probably, with the highest quit rate. We do struggle in keeping people. And so just as important as hiring them, keeping them is probably even more important. What are some of the things that you should be looking for in that initial hiring process to identify the people that we now know are more likely to stay with us? And Adam, you touched on a big one, that is somebody that's referred by one of your team members. What else can we be looking for?
Well, maybe give you a other side of the coin answer. I don't know, philosophically, I just believe most people want to do their best. Most people want to show up and do their job. They want to be good at what they do and deliver on their commitment to their employer. The number one reason employees in this industry turn over is because of a poor relationship with their immediate supervisor. Right. And so that's what we find is the most predictive leading indicator of turnover is when you survey a team and ask the question, do I believe my immediate supervisor has my best interests in mind? And they answer no, that person's gone. They're leaving. And so what I would encourage participants on this call to think about is not how do I ratchet up the screening on the front end, because the candidate's not going to jump through your extra hoops of testing and assessments and all those things. They're not going to do that. What can you do to invest in your leaders to help them be better at delivering on that brand promise as an employer, so that when your team is surveyed, that answer to the question is yes? That has a huge payoff to your organization in so many ways. You can't boil the ocean on the candidate side, but you know who your leaders are. That's maybe a different approach, but one that is really the only thing under your control.
That's an interesting perspective, because we hear a lot about making sure you're investing in the training, the career path. We started this conversation talking about showing people a career path, but also based on your answer, it's so important to make sure that you're training the managers the right way, because that relationship often, as you said, dictates whether the people working for those managers are actually going to stick around for a while.
It's almost like a contract, right, between the manager and the employee. Look, we expect certain things of our managers, of our people leaders in this organization. Let me share with you, the team member, what the company expects of me. They expect me to, do these things, to treat you this way, to listen and learn. And in return, our expectation of you are these things. And when I'm not doing my part, I want you to tell me, and I'll do the same for you. It's that kind of a communication style. You can train that.
Right.
It does require you to hire people managers that have higher than average emotional intelligence, and that's way easier said than done. But that's where I would be investing my time on the hiring side, would be putting the right people leaders in place, because you can't fix the leak in the bucket if the leak is a team leader that no one wants to work for.
Right. Exactly. Kymberly, same thing. What else are you seeing that creates the stickiness that everyone wants so badly?
Well, I think it's definitely that kind of responsibility piece that is unusual, but the way that you see it in employees today might look a little bit different than what it has in the past. But kind of going back to what Adam was saying as well, it's those skills that we give our managers around coaching and developing talent that's critical for us to be able to deliver on that promise. And so most people and most of the skills that we have, and this is why it's such a great place to grow a career, is that it's coachable, it's learnable. And so if you have a manager or a leader who can help people understand how to adjust and tweak their behavior in order to perform at a better outcome, then the person is going to feel better about their job. They're going to feel like they're being invested in. They get reinforced when they do the right things. And then you help them grow in their careers, whatever that looks like for them. Then you have a much richer workforce overall.
Let's talk for a second, because we've mentioned pay levels, how fast they've increased. We've mentioned flexibility. But let's talk for a second, and Kymberly, I know Aimbridge was one of the first out of the gate on this, about when people get paid. We're in an instant gratification society, and you're competing with folks in the gig economy who do get paid instantly. Is this becoming commonplace for Aimbridge, and are you seeing it throughout the rest of the industry?
We are specifically, and part of it is knowing that they have the option. So we implemented daily pay, where an employee can get up to 50% of their earned wages ahead of their pay schedule. So if I worked 8 hours, I could get paid for 4 of those hours today. And that gives them a sense of control. It also helps for some of the emergencies that come up. If you have a flat tire or engine trouble and you have to wait, your option might be going to a payday lender. So it's, again, showing the associate that we care about them and we're giving them control. We have good utilization of our program, but overall, it's more about people knowing that they have the option, that the safety net is there, and that they have control over that when they need it. And it's their money so that they can access it.
Adam, from a Hireology standpoint, you work with a lot of companies in our space. Are you seeing some common threads of those type of things that create that retention, like instant daily pay?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the more opportunity you have to hand decisions to your team members, the better, right? So not everyone's going to take advantage of that, but it's peace of mind knowing that, particularly in these segments of the labor market, where, as Kymberly mentioned, literally the alternative is go pay 40% interest in a payday window. We're providing a social benefit. We're providing a very real benefit to that team member. That's peace of mind, and that differentiates. It really, these kinds of policies really make a difference.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's not necessarily, as Kymberly mentioned, that they're going to use it, but that they know that it's there in case they need it. So it's almost like a safety measure, right? And so the benefit is giving them the confidence that it's there without actually them using that if they don't need it. So that's it seems to be very helpful. One of the overarching things as we kind of bring this to a close that you were hearing throughout this, and Adam, I would love to hear what you guys at Hireology are doing, is the common theme of technology. So whether it's the technology that you use to go out and find and communicate with people in the workforce or seeking a job, to the technology used to process them through the application process, to the technology that you use like Instant Pay to keep them in their jobs. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do at Hireology and some of the technologies that you're seeing being implemented that have been successful.
Yeah, thanks, Chip. So I would say is this, if you find that your operation struggles to be responsive, struggles to consistently bring people in, move them through a process, get them on payroll, keep them there. If managers are complaining about the time it takes to do it, right? You have noise in the system. 99% of the time, it's because you've got manual steps in the process, or you're doing things in a way that is just not necessary anymore. So I would say, if you want help with automation, if you want help with, putting this on rails, moving faster and focusing your time on actually bringing the right people through, we'd love to talk to you. We've got tools that can help you do that. More than anything else, I would say it this way, software by itself doesn't solve the problem. It takes a commitment from the employer and it takes the right tooling. And when you've got those two things together, you can really do make some special changes that impact the bottom line. And that's what we exist to do every day.
And that investment, I assume it pays off so quickly. I mean, I think about the investments that I make around here to try to find the right people. And boy, when you hit a home run and get the right folks in key leadership positions, they're worth their weight in gold. And so as we think about what's going to cost me a little to maybe do some of these things, in the long run, it's probably the best investment you'll make, because as we indicated from the start, this is a people business. With the right people, you succeed. Without the right people, you will struggle.
Yeah, and you want to be careful not to, trip over a dollar trying to save a penny with this kind of stuff. What's the cost of a room you can't sell? What's the cost of 40% of your housekeeping force being contract? What's the cost of unfilled sales roles or unfilled, roles in the restaurant or in the bar? These cost real dollars. And what we find is that, the ROI on investing in these kind of things pays for itself within the first week of the month. It's a very low hurdle on the cost, but it takes intention to change behavior. And, no software can make people want to change, right? You've got to want to do it differently, or more importantly, the top of the organization has to say, hey, we have an intention to be really good at the people side of our business. We're going to do this. It's not going to be perfect, but we're going to do it. It's important. And I expect, we're all on board with this. And if you start from that perspective, then these problems are addressable. They're addressable.
Kymberly, I'm going to give you the final word. You've been doing this a while. You're working for a company that kind of prides itself on being ahead of the game when it comes to technology. You've got scale that most other management companies don't have. What are you seeing that's working in technology? What are some of the tools people should consider from the start of the process all the way to securing that newly hired employee for the long term?
So the simplification of the process is going to be the most critical thing, but also helping people start to move into more of a skills framework. It's one of the things we haven't really talked about yet, but you mentioned earlier, Chip, what are things we can't do that we always did before? And one of those is look for somebody who's got 3 years of experience using the specific brand software in this market, and that doesn't make sense anymore. What you've got to look for instead are those skills that are flexible, skills that are transferable so that somebody can be successful. And so if you've got a tool that helps you do that, that might help you move a little bit faster, but you've still got to have that connection with the person. So it's looking beyond just the words on the paper or the experience that someone has had, and helping to figure out who has the raw material to be able to grow a career with you.
Absolutely. Brittany, do we have a final slide with contact information? I hope we do. If we fail to do that, I apologize. No, go to the next one. That might be it. All right. By the way, that last slide I thought was really interesting, that 54% use a smartphone to complete their recent job search. So I think we've mentioned it throughout this, and it's really the technology angle. If people can't complete this process, at least finding the opportunity and making their way through the hiring process, they can't do that with their handheld device, you're probably going to lose them. Has that been your experience?
100%. I mean, that's your assignment. You know, you can close this window, try to apply to a job at your own hotel, note the experience, and just start asking, questions about why you do it that way. And if you find that you're unhappy with the results, or the answers aren't known, or no one's asking the questions, we'd love to talk to you. We can help.
Absolutely. Listen, to both of you, thank you so much for what you do. You're trying to help solve probably the biggest daily problem that our industry faces each and every day. So Adam Robinson, CEO of Hireology. In fact, I think we'll get your contact information from you and send it out to everybody that registered for this. And Kim Kuebler, thank you so much. Tell the whole team at Aimbridge, who I know and love so much, that I said hello. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today, sharing some insights and some best practices on what to do and what not to do to help solve the workforce problem that we all seem to be facing. So thanks so much for being with us, guys, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, Chip.
Thanks. Bye.